Hey Fusion, Joanna here. I hope you guys are having a good day. I just want to share a few quick thoughts with you that will hopefully encourage you, but also challenge you. We live in a crazy world right now, but I'm a big believer that God can use everything or anything for His glory. There's two different groups of people who are probably watching this video right now. Those who have been highly affected by everything that's going on with COVID-19 and this crisis, and those who are hardly affected by it. What I mean by hardly affected is that you're forced to stay home from school, stay home from work. You're probably not able to see your friends. You feel like you've lost some of your freedom. But thankfully, you guys are actually the ones that fall into the category of being hardly affected in comparison to some people around the world. And I don't mean to minimize what you're going through, because it's definitely hard and challenging, physically, mentally, emotionally. But I also want to challenge you that you can make the most of this time and this season that we're in right now. There's no reason that you should ever be bored. Too often I hear teenagers and adults say, "Oh, I'm so bored, I have nothing to do." But I believe that once you become a Christian, God has plans for your life, and there's always things to do. There's things that He wants to speak to you. There's things that He wants to work through you to affect and impact other people's lives. And so there's a mission and a mandate on your life, even in this season when you may feel like you have nothing to do or you're stuck at home. In Exodus chapter 17, the Israelites have been rescued from Egypt, and they are now at war. They're fighting against an enemy nation. And one person, Joshua, he goes to battle. He goes to the front lines. And then Moses and two other men go up onto a hill. And when they go up there, Moses lifts up his arms and holds up a staff. And as long as Moses is holding this staff up in the air and his arms up in the air, the Israelites and Joshua conquer, and they take ground and they take territory, and they have the advantage in that war. What's interesting in this story is that we see God partner with human beings. And I believe that God wants to partner with you today as well. Why don't we read verses 11 to 13 together, and then you can read the whole chapter later by yourself. As long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage. Moses' arms soon became so tired he could no longer hold them up. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. Then they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands. So his hands held steady until sunset. As a result, Joshua overwhelmed the army of Amalek in battle. So, Fusion, my question for you today is, who might Joshua represent in our world in this crisis that we're living in? Who is on the front lines of this battle? I think of nurses, doctors, people who are working as cashiers at the grocery stores, people who are working with the elderly. Who is walking into dangerous places and situations every day and putting themselves at risk? My second question for you is, how might you be able to stand in the gap today for some of those people? See, when Moses held up his hands, Joshua and the Israelites, those who were on the front lines of the battle, they had the advantage and they won. So what's in your hand today? It's probably not a shepherd's staff, but what do you have and what can you do during this situation? Just to give you a few ideas, if you're watching this video right now, it probably means that you have access to internet. You may have access to a phone or a computer, to sending messages, to sending emails. You probably have access to calling somebody up on the phone. You have access to reading the Bible. You have access to prayer. And just amazingly, you have access to God. You have access to the creator of the world, the most powerful being that exists. So one of the most powerful ways that you can stand in the gap today from your very own home is through prayer. For praying for the people who are on the front lines, praying for people who are in their own homes, praying for loved ones or those who you know are sick. Wouldn't it be amazing if after all this craziness happens, you look back on this moment in history and you can say to yourself, wow, I grew so much during that time. Even though I was home, even though I was maybe lonely in some ways, I grew in my relationship with God. I memorized Bible verses that will help me for the rest of my life. I learned something new. I learned a new skill. I read books. I educated myself. I prayed more in that season than ever before, and I saw God do miracles in my life and other people's lives because of the prayers that I prayed? Or do you want to be able to look back on this season and say, oh, I watched 50 movies, I stayed up all night and slept all day, I finally beat that video game? I challenge you, don't waste your life and don't waste this time that you have been given. So Fusion, teenagers, you matter, you are needed, and God wants to use you during this time in history. I've included some resources down below to help get you started on some of these things. And if you need help, if you want to do these things, if you want to memorize Bible verses, if you want to get in the Bible more, pray more, reach out to myself or one of the other leaders, reach out to our pastor. Make sure you're following along with what Fusion is continuing to do on Wednesday nights and on Sundays, and all the resources that we're putting online for you. So I just encourage you, press into God like never before, because you might never get a time like this again when you are basically forced to stay home, find things to do, spend time with God, spend time with your family. I believe that this can be an incredible time in your life, a time that you will look back on and never forget. Have a great day. Hope to see you soon virtually, and I hope to see you soon physically as well.